Hey folks, it's Sean in St. Louis from the Marketing Gateway, and once again we have a wonderful treat for you today with our interview with this time Wes Morgan, who is a longtime marketer and fixture around the St. Louis marketing community, longtime member of the American Marketing Association, and just an absolutely awesome resource and marketing mentor to many of us here in the area. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Wes because I want you to hear from him directly. So here we go. Hello, everyone. It's Sean in St. Louis from the Marketing Gateway, and I have with me today a guest who I'm really excited to talk to because I talk to him all the time, and he has awesome things to share. This is Wes Morgan, and Wes, I know from the local chapter of the American Marketing Association, or the AMA. So, Wes, welcome.
Hello.
And, you know, we start all of these interviews off by just telling me something surprising that I don't know. So what would you like to share with us today that's really surprising?
Well, I don't have any real surprises, but I'm proud to be a member of the American Marketing Association and have been a member for 28 years. So that's a good.
What's surprising in that is the longevity that you've had, and you know, it's definitely something we're going to talk about as we go through our questions here. But you know, before we get to that, in this series on the Marketing Gateway, we're really focused on the St. Louis area. So tell me how you came to live and work in the St. Louis area.
Okay. My whole career journey starts with an exposure to my father's business, which is a design studio, commercial art, design, advertising, photography. And so as a young man, I was inspired by the idea of creative communications and how that can have a business application. So I went to the University of Miami and studied art there with my uncle, who happened to be the head of the chairman of the art department. And my whole kind of motivation has been to be around business where art meets commerce. So art and commerce are kind of what I'm about. And that's what I think marketing is. Marketing is, if done well, marketing is about finding creative ways to communicate with people that inspires sales and business success.
Absolutely. And St. Louis in particular, what was it that drew you here?
Well, I was working in advertising, and advertising, if you're familiar with that industry, can be a little episodic, and you get recruited to go from one place to another. And I probably took too many headhunter calls, and I was recruited to come to St. Louis to head an account at a really five-star agency, TBWA Chiat. And so I moved to St. Louis, moved my family to St. Louis, and have not been disappointed. It's been a terrific place I have two kids, and great place to have a family and, you know, live kind of a normal life and not be, you know, bombarded by the hustle and bustle of maybe a bigger city like New York or Los Angeles.
For sure. Well, what's something about the St. Louis area that you wish other people knew?
Well, I think that St. Louis, people say St. Louis is a big, small town, and that is true. And, you know, it takes a little while to get, you know, kind of plugged in St. Louis. I remember when I moved here, I was kind of surprised that, you know, people cared what high school you went to. You know, that seems, that would never happen in Chicago or New York. I don't think they wouldn't say, what high school did you go to? But here they do. So, you know, when I got accustomed to that in St. Louis, and I started telling people I went to DeSmet as high school, which was a lie, of course. But that was my go-to. What high school did you go to? If I needed to lie.
You know, I live in the Metro East, and nobody knows any of the high schools over there. So I just say, "Oh, I live in Illinois," and that's enough.
Yeah, that's enough. Well, yeah, you're from someplace else.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Once you cross the river in St. Louis, you've gone too far. I know you're really interested in art, and we have some wonderful art opportunities here in St. Louis. What are some of the museums and galleries that you really like?
Yeah, I will say that if you come to St. Louis and you have a chance to spend some time here, don't miss an opportunity to visit the St. Louis Art Museum. It's a world-class art museum. You know, I'm from Cleveland originally, and Cleveland also has a world-class art museum. And I think the reason is that there are some key benefactors that make those places have the collections that they have. And St. Louis Art Museum has just a fabulous collection. It's an encyclopedic collection, which means it tries to represent different periods of art. So you can see things that are German expressionism. You can see Pablo Picasso. You can see Matisse. You can see Cezanne, and it's just Monet. I mean, we have a Monet water lilies right there in St. Louis at the St. Louis Art Museum. I am a regular visitor of that museum, so and I visit a lot of museums, but the one in St. Louis, the St. Louis Art Museum, is worth going back to many, many times. And if you're like me, you get accustomed to things being in a certain place, but a museum that's that big that has a collection, you only get to see at any given time about 16% of their entire collection. So things move around, and I joke sometimes about people moving my stuff around. So I'll go into a gallery and I go, "Hey, where's the Picasso that usually hangs in this gallery?" That sometimes happens because it has a collection that is, on loan to other shows occasionally. So some of the pieces that you become very fond of maybe not in that location. But aside from that, we talked a little bit about, it's not only the St. Louis Art Museum. The Washington University has a wonderful art museum, the Mildred Kemper Lane Art Museum, which is fabulous, and I encourage you to visit that. We also have the Pulitzer Arts Foundation, and right next door to that is the Contemporary Art Museum. So there's a lot of opportunities. Oh, and of course, one of my favorites is the Lalmeyer Sculpture Park.
Oh, yeah.
It's an outdoor museum, 105 acres of world-class outdoor sculpture on display. It's fabulous. And that's a fabulous museum in that you can go there, bring your kids, bring your dogs, and walk them around the park, and also find yourself in front of a world-class piece of sculpture. It's wonderful.
I've taken my kids there and taken a lot of great pictures. It's just a larger than life place.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll mention, by the way, I think every one of these museums you mentioned is free, which is another great thing about St. Louis, right?
That's true.
We have a lot of free things, and even the St. Louis Art Museum. I mean, beyond all the art you mentioned, there's a mummy there. There's suits of armor. There's African art. There's all kinds of stuff.
That's correct.
So,
that's correct.
Well, fantastic. Well, I am with you in that I feel like having a great exposure to the arts is a wonderful way to expand your creative mind and to think about how you can communicate ideas in different ways. And in marketing, that's really important, of course, especially in advertising where you're from. Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about your background in marketing. You mentioned a little bit about this already, but go into a little more detail, where you started, some of the brands you've worked with, and some of the accomplishments that you've made over the years.
Okay, well, I'm happy to do that. My career journey, basically, my life is episodic, so I will say that there are many chapters in my story, but that's in a way that's the good news, because I've been exposed to and worked with some really terrific brands, and I wanted to work right out of the gate in advertising, so I moved to the New York area and started knocking on doors and was able to land my first job in advertising. I was one of two guys as an account person on the Heineken beer business. So I find myself now in a beer town, St. Louis, but Heineken beer, was at that time it was imported by a company, an importer called Van Munching and Company of New York, and the Van Munching family had negotiated for the exclusive rights to distribute Heineken beer for 50 years. So it is currently now the license was not renewed, and Heineken now owns their own brand there, but because they wanted to distribute their own product. So the people in Howland somewhere are making decisions now, but of course they have decision makers in the United States. But Heineken was an interesting brand to be associated with. And that was, like I said, my first exposure. And somehow, I managed to find my way in. And I will say, I will say in hindsight, getting that first job is a challenge. And I think the secret to my landing that first job had everything to do with talking to as many people as I could about advertising as an industry. And people know people. And the HR director at the agency I went to work for, the first agency I went to work for on the Heineken beer business, was a friend of somebody I had met in Miami, a Miami agency of all things. So it's a small world.
That's fantastic. So here in St. Louis, as you've worked with brands, are there any other brands that you've worked with that have been notable or interesting?
Yes. One of the things I liked about working in advertising, and anybody who wants to pursue that as a career path, you find yourself using basic discipline in marketing communications and creative communications for different brands. And I was able to work on Heineken beer. I worked on JVC Consumer Electronics. So I participated in and attended the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas and places like that. I worked on I've worked in St. Louis. I was recruited to work on the Boatman's Bank business, which ironically, as the world is changing, so Boatman's Bank, which had some award-winning advertising featuring the Boatman's guy, and it was on TV and won a lot of awards for that. It was a lot of fun to work on that. Great creative team. But Boatman's was acquired by Nations Bank, which was acquired by Bank of America, and such is life. So I would say anybody interested in pursuing a career in advertising or marketing should keep that in mind, that they need to be flexible enough to make change happen, because their change is going to happen to them whether they like it or not.
My first bank account was with Boatman's, and I remember them going through those acquisitions, and I kept getting letters in the mail. Yeah, but it was I will say, I remember they had great branding and great advertising. And I was a kid. I was 10 years old, but I remember it.
Yeah. In fact, when Boatman's was about to be acquired by Nations Bank was was kind of the beginning of the banking acquisition craze. The creative team at TBW they had a commercial that they wanted to produce. I think a copywriter wanted to produce that. I don't think the creative director was going to approve this or allow it to be presented to the client. But the commercial that this creative guy wanted to produce was the Boatman's guy sitting on a railroad track saying, Hugh McCall from Nations Bank has asked me to wait right here. He's in a desk on the railroad track about to get run over. So that was the creative team's way of saying, this is what's about to happen to our account.
Again, creativity in marketing. Sometimes you gotta go beyond just saying the very simple thing and have a little bit of fun with it, right?
Absolutely. And actually, I would like to say also, I worked in advertising for 15 years. On a lot of different brands. I worked on Matchbox Toys. I worked on Pepsi Cola, Pizza Hut, Burger King. I worked on a lot of different brands. And the thing that I enjoyed about that and appreciated about it when I became more of a marketing, when I was chief marketing officer and vice president of marketing, having been in the agency business, I was able to apply basic tactics and basic techniques to communications, and also enjoy the pursuit of really coming up with the idea that's going to drive business and drive sales. And that is that's kind of a luxury, because I noticed even when I was working on advertising, at least it seemed like every company has some kind of dysfunction going on in it, that if you're at an agency, at least you can retreat and meet with some creative people and have a few laughs and move on to the next thing.
Very true. Well, one of the things I really associate you with is the American Marketing Association, also known as the AMA. And I know you've been a member for a while. You said 28 years. I've been off and on a member for about, I don't know, probably 10 years or, well, I was a student member too. So go back a little further. But
Yeah.
how did you get started with the AMA?
Yeah, I will say it's unusual for somebody to be a member of the American Marketing Association for that long. The American Marketing Association is based in Chicago, and it's the largest, really the largest global affiliation of marketers. There are over 70 chapters in the United States. And when I moved to St. Louis to work on the Boatman's Bank business, my original strategy for being involved with the American Marketing Association was, hey, this is a good place to get connected with marketing people or decision makers, and we can get some business this way, maybe. And so that was my original reason for becoming involved with the American Marketing Association. But what I loved about it, and I still loved about it, was over the 28-year stretch, a couple of times they made me president, and I was president of the St. Louis chapter. I was able to speak at some national conference on, of all things, research. I talked to a research conference. I'll have to share that with you sometime, Sean. That's a funny thing.
Great.
I got up in front of a room full of research people, and they struck me as being a pretty linear group, really. So there's a lot of gray areas in what I think is important in advertising. But my involvement with the American Marketing Association, I was in charge of communications for a 4-year period. They used to have a newsletter that came out monthly, and I was the guy that kind of coordinated that, designed that, and produced that. I've done programming. I've done other aspects of it. And I've also attended 5 marketing summits, leadership summits in Chicago. So there's been some wonderful, connections both locally and nationally that I have made through the American Marketing Association. So I've enjoyed that. I would encourage anybody interested in marketing or in business, really, to consider joining the American Marketing Association as a way to kind of get plugged in to what's happening. St. Louis is a big, small town, so sometimes it's who you know that's important, and it makes sense to get connected with an organization that does a pretty good job of getting connected with people with relevant topics.
Well, and as you mentioned, there's all kinds of different marketers from all kinds of different disciplines. And if you go to one of the conferences, I mean, you'll find the research people, we're the ones that go to bed early, get up early the next morning while all the marketing people are still sleeping in off of the party and they did the night before, right?
Yeah.
I've met people from creative agencies. I've met people from digital marketing. I've met people from not-for-profits. I've met people from big brands or from small startups or entrepreneurs and everybody. I mean, they come to these events regularly.
Yeah. It's funny. I there's things you remember from that research conference that I was a speaker at. It was the Attitude and Research, conference in St. Louis, and it was in Scottsdale, Arizona, and it was in 2000. So it was a few years ago. But one of the things I remember about that, which I think is an interesting marketing dilemma, is I was there, and I love creative ideas that have life and do well. Well, when I was at that research conference, one of the speakers was the team from Taco Bell that was up there explaining why they were getting rid of the Taco Bell Quiero Taco Bell dog. They had done research that indicated that what was more important was showing product. And while as a creative guy, I kind of agree with that, but you're walking away from a very powerful image, which was that dog that was saying, Quiero Taco Bell. It's kind of funny how you walk away from stuff like that. And I think, insurance companies like Geico and the Limu kind of are also, in that sort of category where they do memorable things, but sometimes they're missing the mark on what they're trying to really communicate.
For sure. Well, You've also been, you mentioned the president of the AMA, you've been a board member at different points. You've been directing things. So how have some of those leadership roles that you've had benefited you?
It's been a way to connect with the marketplace. I think business is a fickle thing, and it's important to, especially if you're a marketing person, your credibility is going to go up and down because people have different attitudes about marketing. Um, I have, as president, I had reinforced the idea that what our mission was to promote the study and practice of marketing, and that includes the academic side of things, looking at trying to be look at what works in marketing. I've also been on my soapbox about being clear that marketing and sales are not the same thing.
Oh yeah.
If you get sales guys kind of running the show, they want to they just want to lower the price and make a lot of sales so they can make a lot of commissions, and it's not good for the brand, and it may not be good for the future of your organization.
So true. So true. Well, when we talk about the AMA today, it's a really different organization than it was in the past. And of course, the pandemic for many national organizations, not just the AMA, the pandemic kind of killed the momentum of a lot of these groups because people stopped showing up to them, and you have a lot fewer people that are involved actively now than you did before. In our local chapter, for example, I used to go to the events that we'd have at Maggiano's, and there'd be 100 people in the room, and now it's probably 20 or 30, which is still a good number, but it's not nearly the same that it used to be. It kind of seems as well naturally like the AMA has lost some of its ability to lead discussions about marketing, and that's in part because marketing itself has changed so much. It's fragmented into so many different sub-disciplines and things like that. So how do you feel that the AMA is still a benefit to those who are members, given how much has changed in the last few years?
Well, it is still a benefit, but it has changed, and people have changed. Business has changed. There was a time, and I don't want to talk like an old dog too much, but there was a time when people went to American Marketing Association meetings, and we did research on why people were members of the American Marketing Association. And the answer, invariably, the number one answer was to network, to make contacts. And 20 years ago, some of those 100 people that you mentioned were salespeople trying to sell you advertising, trying to sell you printing. Those kinds of interactions are less prevalent now because digital marketing is taking over a lot of how marketing is done now, and AI is a top marketing topic now. And what concerns me about technology in general is it doesn't replace human interaction. It doesn't replace the ability to really get insight into why things are happening or how things could be better. I am definitely old school, so I'm just as likely. I'm probably one of the few people still likely to talk about marketing myopia. Ted Levitt's 1960 Harvard Business Review paper on
That's a classic.
It's a classic thing, but it's a great example. The railroads in the late 1800s, turn of the century, they thought they were competing with other railroads. And what they didn't realize in Ted Levitt's paper was that they were really in the transportation business. They were not understanding that they were going to be competing with planes and cars and trucks and other modes of transportation. And interestingly enough, my good friend in New York worked for a transportation newspaper that I did some work for, the Journal of Commerce, and they were all about intermodal transportation. We were talking about. I was always laughing about that. It's like, they were selling container ships to whatever, and every once in a while you hear a news story about traffic being container ships not being able to get through certain ports and such. And you realize how important it is to, global economy, getting things from one place to another. When I was in the toy business, it was all about finding the next hot toy, but also making sure that you could produce it in China or wherever, maybe produce it in China and assemble it in Mexico and somehow get it delivered to the United States. And that was all about shipping.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, even when I'm in the classroom teaching, that people don't really think about when they're thinking about product marketing. Is it's not just the idea; it's taking that idea and turning it into something that actually can be sold. And there's a lot of moving parts involved in that, and then even getting people on board with the idea once you have done all those steps is hard. So there's a lot more to it than just putting a product on the shelf, for sure.
Yeah, you're definitely, you're right. And what's missing in a lot of marketing education now, I think, is because of technology getting the focus, some of the basic blocking and tackling is getting lost. And you used to study marketing and people would trudge through the idea of the 4 Ps: product, promotion, price, and place, and what those things meant and what was involved in doing those things successfully. All of those aspects were not marketing's responsibility, but they were marketing's opportunity to understand the brand and how the brand was getting to the customer.
That's very well said. And I think, we have now the 7 Ps or the 7 Ts or the 4 Cs or the 5 Cs, or there's all these other frameworks too. And I covered them in one of the videos we did. But I think when you're talking about it, it's not marketing's responsibility to take on all those things, but rather they need to have a seat at the table and they need to have a good understanding of what are going on with all those activities so that they can provide some guidance. And marketers should be the first people consulted, not the last. And unfortunately, it tends to be the last in a lot of organizations.
Yeah. Thank you for that comment. I think that's absolutely true. And what's kind of funny is that a lot of it's about educating the C-suite, educating the chief executive officers and the decision makers in an organization. Because if you're a bean counter and all your expertise is in finance, or if you're a chief executive who's just used to kind of standing out front and believing what sales guys tell you about about why your brand is successful or not successful, you're not listening to everybody you need to listen to.
For sure. Well, I know you're really passionate about the golf tournament that you hold every year through the AMA. Tell me a little bit about how that got started and what that's all about.
Well, as I've indicated, I've been involved with the American Marketing Association for a long time. And one of my first experiences when the president of the AMA, we had a board meeting. We were talking about maybe doing a golf tournament, and the president made the statement. Sometimes they get motivated by one statement. She made a statement that, we couldn't do a golf outing. That's too involved. That's too, we can't afford it, and we can't get enough people involved. And my mission from the very first go round was to prove that you can do a golf outing. It doesn't have to be designed to raise money to cure cancer. It can be just a social kind of interaction with people that are like-minded who care about marketing. And so that's what my golf tournament has turned into. I've purposely made it an effort to not make it a very expensive $350 a person kind of thing, because we're not trying to cure cancer. We're not trying to raising money's fine, and golf tournaments do a good job of raising money sometimes. But the American Marketing Association St. Louis chapter's golf tournament is really just kind of a social, have fun kind of thing. And it's also very careful not to make people feel guilty about how well they play either. You don't have to play extremely well. We're just going to move it along. It's 9 holes. It's a municipal golf tournament, and all abilities are welcome, and we keep it moving, and it's a fun day. And so we've been doing it annually, and Thank you for mentioning it. I've been involved with this golf tournament for about 20 years.
And it's good to know skill's not a requirement, because I have never played a game of golf in my life other than mini golf. So if I ever show up, I will definitely be at the bottom of the rankings, but I'll still come and have a good time.
Yeah, even if you don't have clubs, we've borrowed clubs and we've made it possible for people who don't usually play golf to play golf, And, really serious golfers might be a little frustrated that it's not a fast round, but it's only 9 holes and it's just an afternoon. It's not going to kill you to spend a little time. We were very fortunate this past year, for example, to have Robert Half as one of our sponsors, and we had Chiro One, which is a chiropractic organization, be one of our sponsors, and we got out there. And one of the problems of any golf tournament is the weather. We started our golf tournament this year, and it was pouring on the first hole. We were playing for 10 minutes, and the rain just came, down like a deluge. But it cleared up, and we those who finished, it was kind of a fun day. Everybody was drenched, but those two sponsors really appreciated the opportunity to network with AMA members, and both of those sponsors were smart enough. I don't think they knew it was going to rain, but they both had tents that they set up, so they were dry. And Robert Half was serving fireballs, shots, and it was kind of a fun, crazy afternoon.
Sometimes having a story to tell is what makes those events really memorable. So, yeah. Well, let me ask you, in the world of marketing in general, what are some things that you're really excited about right now?
Well, what I continue to be excited about is, kind of my strategy from the very beginning is that I think that marketing is an opportunity for you to be in a business or be in the business of creativity as it applies to business. And I think that's exciting. And by creativity, I mean, words and pictures and trying to think through what makes, business successful, and how to be successful and what you have to do to be, to win. And so that's really what excites me. What kind of aggravates me and kind of upsets me, and here I am being like an old dog again. It's just like a lot of the focus now is on conversations about technology, and technology is important, and it's amazing what technology can do. It's amazing what artificial intelligence can do. But what I see happening sometimes, especially in the C-suite, is the assumption that, the physical presence of marketing people and marketing thinkers, they think it might not be as important because technology can take that place. And that's dangerously close to believing that robots can take over the world. And I just don't think that's a fair thing to say.
I was so encouraged at our spring conference where that was where you and I reconnected this year, that there's only one topic about AI. I was actually on that panel, and we were very cautious about how we talked about it, but everybody else was talking about real old school marketing kind of stuff. They were talking about building products that people wanted, finding needs that needed to be filled, looking for ways to reach out to communities that weren't being reached out to. I mean, it was good stuff, and it reminded me how important those fundamentals still are even today.
Yeah. It's funny because, as I said, my first half of my career was really in advertising and big agencies on a variety of brands, and so what inspired me, and what I read and what I studied was, advertising stories from, David Ogilvy's Confessions of an Ad Man and Advertising Man, and Russell Reeves' Reality in Advertising, Claude Hopkins. I mean, there's a long list of guys born at the turn of the century that shaped advertising as an industry. Bill Bernbach, Doyle Dane Bernbach, And by the way, I would recommend anybody who wants to, you know, kind of get a primer on marketing and the history of marketing, is to go on YouTube and find Philip Kotler talking to the Chicago Humanities Conference. He talks about he's very good at just kind of identifying what happened in the history of marketing. And Jerry Delafamina is an advertising guy that I found him a speech that he made one time. He wrote a book called "From the Wonderful Folks Who Gave You Pearl Harbor," and he was very, kind of a cynical ad guy, saying, how do you advertise a consumer electronics brand? And his joke was from the Japanese who that gave you Pearl Harbor. So that's kind of a dig there, but that's the title of his book, and it was a very big hit. And Jerry Delafamina has what I found him somewhere on a talk he was giving, and he was talking about the history of advertising and how it changed from, in the beginning, advertising was a kind of an old boy network, and it was very Protestant white guys like J. Walter Thompson and Ted Bates, and those were kind of controlling the business. I think advertising is changing, but who owns agencies now is consolidating. So it's kind of interesting to see how the agency business has changed. I still think it's important for clients to think about outside resources. When I joined as chief marketing officer at HBE Corporation, one of the first questions the CEO of that organization asked me about, he says, "What do you think about hiring internal resources and hiring an agency? What do you think?" He actually asked that question. I thought that was a very insightful question he had. And I said, well, it's important for you to have inside resources so you'll get honest appraisals of what's going on. But sometimes it's a good idea to have an outside agency as well, because they will tell you, they'll give you the honest scoop, and they won't be worried about you firing them the next day, even though agencies do get fired. But if you have a good partnership with an agency, you trust them, and you get into some good conversations.
As a research professional, I think both internal and external perspectives are important, and that organizations that have both are usually the better for it. So I 100% agree with you there. Well, it's been so awesome talking to you, and I've learned a lot just in our short discussion here. And I wanted to ask you, every guest that I have on, I give them a chance to plug something, anything you want. So here's your chance. What would you like to plug today?
Okay, well, my plug is basically for the American Marketing Association. I find out about the American Marketing Association. Come to one of our coffees. We have a coffee every once a month, and we have a program usually about once a month, and they vary in topics. And it's good to show up whether you're interested or you think you're interested in the topic or not. It's worthwhile to network with other marketers and kind of get plugged into this big small town that we live in, St. Louis. So it's a good thing. So that's my plug. The American Marketing Association. It's gotten. I think the membership is not as expensive as it used to be. I think it's $150, something like that, for an annual membership. There are deals for companies who want to have multiple members. You want to have 4 or 5 members. That would be good. I think about, because I've been involved with the American Marketing Association so long, I remember, we used to have tables full of people at our meetings from different companies and organizations. That's not as true as it used to be, but it would be nice if we still had a table of 10 filled with Anheuser-Busch people, and a table of 10 with people from Southwestern Bell who are interested in research. That's the kind of thing that we used to have. We used to have a group of people from Lutheran Hour Ministries. I don't know why they kept coming every week. It was like every month that they would show up. It'd be like, because it was kind of a collegial kind of thing where organizations. We like to get back to that a little bit, and but nevertheless, there's still an opportunity to network with like-minded people interested in marketing and the principles of marketing, the study and practice of marketing.
Well, again, thank you so much for being on the Marketing Gateway. It's awesome to have you as a marketing mentor for us here in St. Louis, and I'm sure we'll have you on again to talk about some other things one day. So thanks so much.
Well, I love the show, and I'll keep going, Sean. You're doing a great job.
Well, I want to thank Wes Morgan for taking time to be on the Marketing Gateway, and of course, details on how to get in touch with him and to read his book, which he's got on his website, will be in the show notes. But I also want to encourage you, if you are here in St. Louis, and I hope many of you who are watching or listening are, please come and join us at one of these AMA events. They are usually on Thursdays, the first and the third Thursday of the month. And you can certainly reach out to me or Wes or anyone else who's involved with the organization to find out where they are. But we would love to have you come and be a part of our local community and share your knowledge and expertise, meet people, network, have a great time. And also, I'd love for you to come and be a marketing mentor on this show. So if you have liked what you've heard and you want to be a part of this, please reach out and we'll be happy to see if we can get a time to schedule you in and have you be a guest just like Wes was. Thanks so much. I'm Sean in St. Louis. This has been the Marketing Gateway. See you next time.